Elara Voss stood among them, her usually sharp eyes softened by the weight of the moment. Around her, the crew gathered in a tight circle, their faces etched with fatigue and sorrow. Makeshift plaques, crafted from salvaged metal and etched with the names of fallen comrades, were laid out on the polished wooden deck, glinting faintly under the muted light. A cold wind swept over the floating continent, carrying with it the distant roar of shifting skies and the faint scent of ozone after a recent storm. Torin Vex stood beside Elara, his broad shoulders squared but his eyes betraying the internal struggle to remain stoic. Garrick Thorne's usual brash confidence was tempered, his sun-bleached hair tousled by the wind as he stared down at the plaques with a rare solemnity. Myra Solon, ever the calm and analytical presence, scanned the group with an empathetic gaze, while Lena Oris kept a vigilant watch, her expression tight as she monitored the com frequencies for any sign of disturbance. Elara's voice broke the silence, low and steady. "We carry their memories with us, not as a burden, but as a beacon. Every star we chart, every skyland we reclaim, honors the sacrifices they made." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew. The memorial was not just a tribute. It was a crucible, forging the fractured team into a family bound by loss and purpose. Later, in the quiet solitude of the navigation chamber, Elara sat alone. The soft hum of the ship's engines was a distant lullaby compared to the storm raging in her mind. Her fingers traced the worn lines of a faded star chart, the same one that had guided her on the fateful expedition that ended in disaster years before. The cold air in the chamber curled around her breath in faint misty clouds. Memories surged unbidden, the screams, the twisted wreckage, the faces of those she had failed to save. Yet beneath the guilt, a stubborn ember of resolve burned bright. "I will not let their deaths be in vain," she whispered to the empty room. Meanwhile, on the observation deck, Yarick and Torin stood side by side, their gazes fixed on the ever-shifting political borders below. The floating islands of Skyfold drifted like scattered jewels against the endless sky, their positions in constant flux. The recent battles had altered the balance of power, but the fragile peace was tenuous at best. "Kale's shadow hasn't lifted," Torin said gruffly, his piercing blue eyes scanning the horizon. "We've won a battle, not the war." Jarek nodded, the familiar scar over his left eye creasing with concern. "And there are those who would see Skyfold burn rather than share the spoils. We have to stay sharp, no more surprises." Their conversation was interrupted by Mira and Lena emerging from the lower decks, their faces illuminated by the glow of a portable decoding device. They carried urgent news, new intercepted messages, hinted at mercenary movements and political machinations, stirring unrest beyond the reclaimed skylands. "The peace we fought for is fragile," Mira said, her voice steady but urgent. "There are forces gathering. We need to act before the next storm hits." Elara gathered her crew in the strategy room, the air thick with tension and unspoken fears. The echoes of their past battles lingered like ghosts, but the future demanded courage and unity. "We honor those we've lost by facing what comes next," Elara declared, meeting the eyes of each crew member. "Skyfold belongs to all of us. We will protect it together." As the airship hummed against the ever-changing skies, the crew understood that the true challenge lay not only in the battles ahead, but in reconciling the scars of their past. The path to lasting peace was uncertain, but their resolve was unwavering. The night deepened, and with it, the resolve of the horizon's edge and its crew. Above them, the stars flickered silent witnesses to the echoes of the past and the promise of new beginnings. But in the shadows, beyond the floating continent, unseen threats stirred, reminding them all that the skies of Skyfold were never truly at rest. And so, as the memorial candles flickered and the crew faced their memories, the fragile peace held for one more night. But dawn would bring new challenges and new choices that would shape the future of the skies. Flickering lantern light cast long shadows across the room, illuminating the intricate star charts and salvaged maps spread out like a patchwork of secrets waiting to be unraveled. Elara stood at the center, her sharp eyes scanning each route, tracing her finger along the lines that spoke of unclaimed territories, hidden skylands, and the whispered legends of ancient technology waiting to be rediscovered. The air was thick with anticipation, a tangible promise that their journey was far from over. Yarrick Thorne leaned against the bulkhead nearby, arms crossed, his rugged features softened by the golden glow of the lanterns. His sun-bleached hair was tousled from the day's exertions, and the scar over his left eye seemed to deepen as he listened intently. Beside him stood Tauren Vex, broad-shouldered and imposing, his piercing blue eyes never leaving the maps. "These new coordinates," Elara said, pointing to a cluster of stars that shimmered faintly on the chart, "suggest that the ancient skylands extend farther than we thought. There's a whole sector beyond the rift, unexplored and unclaimed." Myra Solin's voice, calm and analytical, cut through the murmurs. "Our recent findings from the lost Skyland indicate technology that could revolutionize airship navigation and defense. If we can locate more of these sites, the advantage could shift dramatically in our favor." Kes Marlowe, the young apprentice navigator, stood near Myra, eyes wide with eagerness. "Do you really think we can chart those skies, Captain? It sounds dangerous." Elara smiled, a rare softness breaking through her usual steely demeanor. "Danger is part of the sky's nature, Kes, but so is discovery. And that is why we press on." Outside, the wind whispered against the hull, carrying the sense of rain and ozone. On the deck, Yarrick exchanged a serious glance with Tauren. "We need to be ready for more than just storms," Yarrick muttered. "The political factions aren't going to sit idly by while we expand our reach." Tauren nodded grimly, and with Captain Kale's influence waning but not broken, mercenaries and pirates alike will see opportunity in the chaos. We'll have to tighten security and be prepared for sabotage. Back in the workshop, Myra and Kes bent over a set of mechanical parts recovered from the lost Scotland. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal filings, and the soft clinking of tools filled the small space. Mira's silver hair was streaked with grime as she carefully examined the components. "These gears," she explained, "are part of a propulsion system unlike anything we've seen. If integrated into our ships, they could increase speed and maneuverability exponentially." Kes's eyes sparkled with wonder. "Imagine what that would mean for our next mission." "It also means new risks," Mira replied, "if such technology falls into the wrong hands." Meanwhile, in the cramped signal room, Lena Oris adjusted her equipment, the soft crackle of intercepted transmissions filling the space. Her fingers danced over dials and switches as she deciphered coded messages. Her eyes narrowed as she identified communications between rival factions mobilizing beyond the floating borders. The fragile peace they had fought so hard to secure was already showing signs of strain. Elara joined Lena briefly, their faces illuminated by the glow of the monitors. "What do you see?" increased chatter, Lena said. "Movements of ships and troops, whispers of alliances and betrayals. It's only a matter of time before the next conflict ignites." Elara's jaw tightened. "Then we must be ready, not just to explore, but to defend everything we've reclaimed." As the night deepened, the crew gathered once more in the main cabin to finalize plans. The air was thick with a mixture of excitement and solemnity. Each member knew that their next campaign would test them in ways they had not yet imagined. Yet beneath the weight of uncertainty, a fierce hope burned bright, the hope that together they could chart a new future for Skyfold, one forged in courage, trust, and unrelenting determination. Elara's gaze swept over her crew. Yarek's steadfast loyalty, Mira's unquenchable curiosity, Torin's unyielding protection, Kess's fresh enthusiasm, and Lena's vigilant watchfulness. They were more than a crew. They were a family bound by shared purpose and unspoken promises. "We sail at dawn," Elara announced, her voice steady and resolute. "The skies beyond wait for no one. Let's show them what Skyfold is made of." Outside, the first light of morning crept over the horizon, painting the clouds in hues of gold and rose. The floating continent stretched endlessly into the distance, a canvas of possibility and peril. As the expedition prepared to take flight once more, the future of Skyfold hung in the balance. A new chapter written in the winds, waiting to be claimed. And so, with hearts steeled and eyes fixed on the unknown, the next campaign began. Below, the drifting clouds wove a shifting tapestry of white and grey, while distant floating isles hovered like sentinels against the endless blue. Inside, the air was thick with murmurs, the low hum of voices weaving through the space as delegates from rival factions took their places around the circular table. Each face bore the weight of past conflicts and the cautious hope of new beginnings. Elara Voss stood at the helm of this uneasy gathering, her lean figure framed by the soft glow of suspended lanterns. The flickering light cast sharp shadows across her weathered features, emphasizing the determination in her sharp eyes and the firm set of her jaw. Her dark hair was drawn back into a practical braid, a symbol of the woman who had weathered storms far more brutal than any political unrest. "Skyfold is at a crossroads," Elara began, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the rising chatter like a blade. "For too long, our floating continent has been fractured by mistrust, piracy, and shifting borders. But today, we have the chance to chart a new course, not just for ourselves, but for all who call these skies home." Her gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on each delegate. Among them were representatives of exploration guilds, former pirates turned mercenaries, and political envoys from the major Skyland factions. The tension was palpable, a delicate dance of glances and guarded postures. Yarek Thorn leaned against the chamber's edge, his rugged frame relaxed but alert. His sun-bleached hair caught the lantern light, and the scar over his left eye seemed to deepen as he watched Elara. Despite their turbulent past and clashing leadership styles, his loyalty to the crew and to the fragile hope she embodied was unwavering. "We've fought hard to reclaim what was lost," Elara continued, "but reclaiming territory is only the beginning. We must work together to secure these lands, share knowledge, and protect one another from the dangers that still roam the skies." Mira Solon stepped forward then, her slender frame illuminated by the soft blue glow of a holographic projection she had activated on the table's surface. Intricate schematics of ancient Skyland technology flickered and shifted as she manipulated them with deft fingers. "Our discoveries in the lost Skylands reveal technologies that could revolutionize travel and defense," Myra explained, "but they also attract those who would use them for conquest and chaos. Cooperation is not just ideal, it's essential." Torin Vex, broad-shouldered and scarred, nodded grimly from his seat. His piercing blue eyes scanned the room with the vigilance of a seasoned warrior who had seen the price of betrayal and bloodshed. "We stand ready to defend this fragile peace," he said, voice low but resolute. But we must be honest about the threats still looming. Outside, the sky darkened as a storm gathered momentum. The distant rumble of thunder rolled across the floating isles, a stark reminder of the volatile nature of the skies and the political landscape alike. Garrick exchanged a wary glance with Torin, the unspoken understanding of dangers both seen and hidden passing between them. As debates unfolded, alliances slowly took shape. Old grudges were set aside, if only temporarily, in favor of a shared vision. Lena Oris, the communications specialist, intercepted and decoded encrypted signals that confirmed the presence of external factions. Watching this new coalition with suspicion and intent, her quick reports ensured the Council remained one step ahead of looming threats. Meanwhile, in the quiet corners of the chamber, Kesmarlo, the young apprentice navigator, stood beside Myra, their faces bathed in the soft glow of holographic projections. They whispered excitedly about the possibilities the recovered artifacts promised. Kess's bright eyes reflected the hope and determination that Elara saw in herself years ago, a reminder that the future of Skyfold was not just a matter of survival, but of discovery and growth. The Council stretched late into the floating night, voices rising and falling like the turbulent currents outside. When the final agreements were signed, Elara allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. The winds of change were indeed blowing through Skyfold. Yet, as she looked out over the storm-darkened skies, she knew this was only the beginning. The alliances forged today were fragile, and the shadows lurking beyond the horizon promised challenges that would test every ounce of courage and trust they had fought so hard to build. "We have a long journey ahead," Elara said quietly to Yorick as the chamber emptied. "But for the first time in a long time, I believe the skies can be ours to protect." Yorick cracked a rare, genuine smile. "Lead the way, Captain. We've got your back." The storm broke then, rain pelting the crystalline walls as lightning danced across the clouds. It was a tempestuous welcome to Skyfold's new era, reminder that in these skies, peace was always earned, never given. And Elara Voss was ready to meet the challenge. The winds of change had begun to stir. Outside the council chamber, the glow of lanterns flickered against the rain-slicked stone. The air was electric with possibility, but beneath the surface, the old tensions simmered. Elara's thoughts drifted to the crews scattered across the reclaimed skylands, explorers, traders, former pirates all watching, waiting for the next move. Mira approached, her silver hair damp from the storm. "The artifacts we uncovered, they suggest there's more beneath the surface," she said quietly. "Secrets that could either bind us together or tear us apart." Elara nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon where the storm clouds churned. "Then we'll face them together. Skyfold's future depends on it." As the night deepened and the storm raged, the floating continent held its breath, perched on the edge of transformation. The campaign to reclaim and protect the lost skylands was far from overbought, with Elara at the forefront. The skies had never looked more promising, and somewhere, in the darkened reaches beyond the floating isles, eyes watched and waited. The winds of change were only beginning to blow. Elara Voss stood at the prow, her lean figure silhouetted against the roiling clouds that darkened the horizon. Her dark braid whipped around her face like a banner of defiance, sharp eyes tracing the shifting shapes of storm-racked skies. Around her, the crew moved with practiced urgency, securing ropes, checking instruments, their breaths misting in the cold air of the high altitude. Storms coming fast. Lena Oris called from the communications post, her fingers flying deftly over the signal interceptors. "We've got less than 10 minutes before it hits full force." Elara's jaw tightened. This was no time for hesitation. The Skylands were unpredictable, but she had learned to trust her instincts and the strength of those who followed her. All hands, prepare for turbulence. Secure all loose gear and brace for sharp maneuvers. Yorick ready the pilots to adjust course if necessary. Yorick Thorn emerged from the shadows of the deckhouse, his sun-bleached hair a wild halo in the storm's growing fury. "You heard the captain. Let's keep this bird in the air." Their eyes met for a brief moment, a silent exchange that carried the weight of their shared history, tension, respect, and the fragile trust that had been forged over countless trials. Inside the navigation room, the air was thick with anticipation. Maps and star charts lay spread across the table, but outside, the stars were swallowed by angry clouds. Mira Solan's calm voice broke the heavy silence. The storm's creating unstable air currents ahead. Our best option is to steer into the wind, slow the fleet, and maintain formation. Kess, Marlowe, standing close by, glanced nervously at Elara. The young apprentice navigator's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "Captain, will we make it?" Elara crouched beside her, placing a steady hand on the girl's shoulder. "We will, together." The flagship's engines roared as the fleet adjusted course, the airships dipping and swaying in the turbulent sky. Outside, Tauren Vex took command of the deck crew, his booming voice cutting through the howling wind. "Hold fast. Watch your lines. Protect the hulls." The storm battered them mercilessly, lightning cracked like celestial fire. Thunder rolled as if the heavens themselves were in conflict. But under Elara's firm direction, the fleet held together. The crew's movements became a symphony of resilience, an unspoken vow that they would not be broken. As the tempest began to wane, the clouds parted to reveal a sky washed clean by the storm's fury. Elara gathered the crew on the deck, the cool air now still except for the soft flapping of flags. She looked out over the faces, weathered, tired, but alight with renewed spirit. "We have faced the wrath of Skyfold and stood firm," Elara said, her voice steady and warm. "This expedition is not just about reclaiming lost lands. It is about forging a future together, trusting in one another and in our shared purpose." A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathered crew. Yorick stepped forward, his usual bravado tempered by genuine respect. "Captain Voss, you've earned your place. This crew follows you not just because they must, but because they believe in you." Elara allowed herself a brief smile, a quiet moment of victory. The storms of the past, the mistakes, the doubts all seemed to fade beneath the weight of this new beginning. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the floating continent, she knew that the true journey was only just beginning. But as the horizon stretched wide and uncharted before them, Elara's thoughts lingered on the fragile alliances and shifting borders yet to be navigated. The skies of Skyfold were vast, wild, and uncertain. To lead here was to embrace both danger and hope in equal measure. "Steady as she goes," Elara whispered to herself, eyes fixed on the clearing sky. "We are the leaders now, and the future is ours to shape." Above them, the wind carried their resolve, a promise soaring among the clouds. The first light of dawn painted the decks in hues of amber and rose, casting long shadows that danced with the gentle sway of the flagship. Elara moved among her crew with a newfound ease, her presence a steady anchor in the midst of the ever-shifting skies. In the galley, Mira Solan bent over a collection of intricate devices, her silver hair catching the morning light. The storm revealed new anomalies in the air currents, she explained, showing Elara her findings. "If we harness these patterns, we could reduce travel time and avoid hostile patrols. Elara nodded thoughtfully. Excellent work, Mira. Prepare a briefing for the fleet. We need every advantage we can get. Nearby, Tauren Vex was already overseeing repairs, his scarred hands steady as he directed the crew. The hulls took a beating, but nothing we can't fix. The men are ready for whatever comes next. Yarrick approached, his demeanor less brash and more reflective. I wasn't sure we'd make it through the night, but you pulled us through. I've got your back, Elarono, more games. Elaro met his gaze, the unspoken truce between them now a solid foundation. I'm glad to hear that, Yarrick. We need to be united if we're going to succeed. Kess Marlowe lingered at the edge of the group, her youthful face bright with determination. Will I ever be as good as you, Captain? Elara smiled, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. You're already on your way. Keep your eyes on the stars and your heart in the skies. We all learn as we go. The crew dispersed to their tasks, each member carrying a spark of hope ignited by the storm's trial. Elara lingered for a moment, breathing deep the crisp morning air. The weight of leadership was still heavy, but it no longer crushed, hurt, empowered her. She turned to the horizon, where the first wisps of cloud drifted like whispers of promise. Skyfold awaited, vast and mysterious, a canvas on which they would paint their legacy. And Elara Voss would lead them there, a true leader among the clouds. Yet, as the fleet sailed forward, the shifting political tides of Skyfold stirred unseen currents. Messages intercepted by Lena Oris hinted at factions unsettled by the expedition's success, and the fragile peace balanced on a knife's edge. Elara knew the battles ahead would not only be fought in the skies, but in the hearts and minds of those who sought to claim the future. But with her crew united and her resolve unshaken, she was ready. Let them come, she whispered. We are Skyfold's guardians now. And with that, the flagship surged forward, cutting through the dawn, a beacon of hope and steadfast leadership in a world forever shifting beneath their wings. Elara Voss stood at the edge, her sharp eyes scanning the vast expanse of drifting clouds below, and the scattered islands floating silently in the morning mist. The air was crisp, tinged with the faint scent of ozone and the freshness of untouched sky. A gentle breeze teased the dark braid that hung down her back, the familiar rhythm of the wind whispering promises of both challenge and hope. Behind her, the expedition's fleet of airships bobbed gently at anchor, their sails catching the early light, glinting like jewels suspended in the endless blue. The distant hum of their engines was a steady heartbeat, a reminder of the journey they had undertaken and the battles they had fought to reach this moment. The scars of conflict were still fresh in Elara's mind, the loss of comrades, the betrayals endured, and the personal demons she had faced and conquered. Yet here she was, standing on the precipice of a new era. It's beautiful, a voice said softly beside her. Elara turned to see Yarrick Thorn, his rugged face softened by the dawn's gentle light, the signature scar over his left eye catching the gleam. Despite the hardships and their past clashes, the tension between them had eased, replaced by a mutual respect forged in the crucible of their shared trials. It is, Elara replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. But beauty comes with its own dangers. Yarrick nodded, his gaze sweeping over the horizon. And we'll face them, together. Their partnership, once fraught with distrust and conflicting ambitions, had grown into a balanced alliance. The expedition's success had depended as much on their ability to navigate not only the skies, but also the fragile trust between them. Now, as leaders of a coalition that stretched across the floating continent, Their challenge was to maintain that trust among their crew and the various factions vying for control. Inside the main airship, Mira Solin was already at work. The slender scholar sat at a sturdy workbench, her pale fingers delicately tracing the intricate runes glowing faintly on a recently uncovered ancient device. The soft hum of the artifact resonated through the engineering bay, drawing the attention of crew members gathered nearby. Myra's silver hair caught the lantern light, shimmering as she leaned closer, eyes alight with wonder. "This could change everything," she murmured, her voice filled with awe. "The technology here, it's unlike anything we've seen. It holds the key to understanding the very forces that keep Skyfold afloat." Torin Vex, the ever-watchful security chief, stood silently near the bay's entrance, his broad shoulders tense but his piercing blue eyes calm. The scars marking his battle-worn face told stories of countless fights, but his presence now was one of solemn vigilance rather than aggression. The fragile peace they had won was precious, and he was determined to protect it at all costs. As the sun climbed higher, Elara convened the crew on the open deck. The wind whipped around them, carrying the vibrant energy of new beginnings. She looked out over the faces seasoned explorers, sky pirates turned allies, scholars, and apprentices, all bound by a mission that had transformed them. "Today," Elara began, her voice steady and clear, "we stand not just on a reclaimed Skyland, but at the dawn of a new chapter for Skyfold. Our journey was perilous, our losses great, but our victory is a testament to our courage and unity." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Kess Marlowe, the young apprentice navigator who had grown under Ilara's mentorship, stood near the front, eyes wide with a mixture of admiration and determination. She represented the future, a beacon of hope for the skies yet to be explored. "We have much work ahead," Elara continued. "The alliances we forge now will shape the destiny of these floating lands. We must remain vigilant, adaptable, and united." Yarrick stepped forward, his voice carrying the rough edge of a pirate tempered by newfound purpose. "And we'll face whatever storms come together." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices a chorus of resilience and hope against the vast sky. As the sun fully rose, casting long shadows and illuminating the floating countenance endless possibilities, Elara knew the battle for Skyfold's future was far from over. But for the first time in a long while, she felt ready. Later, as twilight painted the sky in hues of violet and rose, Elara found herself alone atop the cliff once more. The stars began to twinkle faintly above, ancient guides for a navigator's soul. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn, folded star chart, one of many she had consulted throughout the campaign. Her fingers traced the familiar constellations, a quiet ritual that grounded her amidst uncertainty. The past's shadows lingered, but they no longer defined her. Elara folded the chart carefully, slipping it back into her jacket, and looked ahead toward the horizon where new mysteries awaited. The dawn over Skyfold was not merely the end of their journey, it was the beginning of many more. And Elara Voss, once a fallen star, was ready to lead the way among the clouds. The skies whispered their ancient secrets, and the floating continent breathed with the promise of endless adventure. The campaign was over, but the story of Skyfold was just beginning.